For now, scuffed audio it is.
I think it's charming.
Yeah, it's like you're in the field, you know?
Yeah. Reporting live, Nosferatu from the castle.
It's dank, it's dark, it's cold, and I'd like to go home now, please.
Your scary
And
noises.
now back to you.
But the rats, there's got to be cool rats.
Definitely a couple. They look friendly.
Alright, stop wrestling around.
All right. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to Let's Dads with Dad and our esteemed guest, MayDreaming.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu from 2024. An amazing movie. It gets better with every watch, honestly.
It really does.
What are you guys' initial thoughts?
I wasn't totally sure. I was like, am I gonna pay full attention this time? But I did.
Enraptured.
I feel like Eggers' movies are just so visually stunning. It's easy to rewatch them and notice new things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really, even though I'm very familiar with the story, it's really fun to rewatch. I just love the way that he handled it.
Yeah, it doesn't really ever get old. I was listening to an interview with him how he read Bram Stoker's Dracula and he found it really stuffy. So with Nosferatu, it felt more of this sort of, ethereal fairy tale like story, whereas it's not trying to like over explain what it is. It's very simple, but it does it really well.
Yeah. It's also, if I'm correct, I think it is the first inspired, like the Dracula inspired piece that really takes its account from Ella's perspective.
Yeah, it was one of the things that Eggers actually said. I have the direct quote here.
Or Mina in the original text.
Yeah, and then Ellen in Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Yeah, so before filming even began, Eggers wrote a novella with extensive backstories and scenes on all the characters and settings. And in writing this, Eggers discovered that he wanted to make Ellen's journey the driving force of the film, taking inspiration from the previous films, extrapolating on Ellen's suffering, and, quote, she is a victim not only of the vampire, but of the 19th century society. This is Ellen's story. There's a prologue that begins with her childhood and an unexplained but terrifying and haunting story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that it's her story. I think that he did an amazing job exploring the way she's being perceived by the people around her, and then also these supernatural moments that she's had since she was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's disconnected to this different world and just doesn't really fit in the world that most women of this contemporary society would be wanting these lavish things, but she's kind of differing in that effect of where she just wants her love Thomas and nothing more, really.
Yeah, I think that's the romance between Ellen and Thomas really stands out to me versus the other versions that I've seen.
Yeah, they don't really go into it. They definitely kind of explore Nosferatu more, especially like the Herzog one and his sort of pain. But I feel like Robert Eggers really got all of those elements and put it really succinctly into this whole movie.
Yeah. Well, and the book is like very much mostly from like Harker's experience from his perspective. So like Ella is present, but as more of like, an object wife than like a very deep emotional connection, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the benefits of it being able to be, interpreted in our modern times here where we have, advanced societal feminism and whatnot.
And that sort of archetype that she fit into in previous versions is kind of what Anna is in this movie, where she's really just an object to her husband or a baby-making machine.
Yeah.
Just and it's it's a big contrast to Ellen's character, who doesn't care about money and just loves Thomas for who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also like I love that, like, even though they are, differently motivated, that like you do get a very strong sense of the depth of the feminine friendship between them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they did a really good job of showcasing that just in the one scene when Ellen jump scares Anna in the hallway. And
Yeah.
yeah, then just having a nice, really tender moment in bed as good friends.
Yeah, I think Anna says thank you for loving me, which I thought was really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it sucks that Friedrich has to be the way he is.
Yeah.
Poor Anna. Poor Anna, really.
Yeah. Anna very much gets the short end of the stick on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was
But
really cool. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say it was really interesting. I didn't catch this before, but watching it another time, I noticed Ellen talking about her cat, introducing her cat to Franz, saying she has no master or mistress, which I really liked. The cat was sort of like symbolic of how Ellen sees the world and
Yeah, exactly.
aspires to freedom.
I was actually about
Yeah.
to touch on the kittens themselves, because it in the original, in Murnau's version, it opens up with a kitty cat, and this one, well, it opens with Ellen's horrific childhood. But the next scene, they have their little kitty cat, and so I was kind of looking at some symbolism of what cats mean, especially in film. And usually it's like a connection to nature or this sort of innocence. But I was kind of thinking, watching it, I was like, well, cats are also like hunters and killers of rats, which they so Franz also, has all these cats, and he's the only other one that kind of really knows what Orlok is. And they're also
Mm.
seen as supernatural and demonic creatures linked to witches back from the Middle Ages to about the 19th century.
Yes.
There's a lot of symbolism there with the cats that are really present throughout all versions, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do a really good job of touching on it. And something else I noticed when Franz calls Ellen, or says that she could have been a priestess of Isis, I looked into it, and Isis was actually the magic goddess of magic and wisdom, and she was really heavily associated with cats in Egyptian culture. So, another tip of the hat.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I love that line. I just love that whole scene where he's standing on the stairs and he's looking at her, just saying, in heathen times you would have been a high priestess,
Yeah.
but
Like,
we're in
like sees
strange
her.
modern times now. He really sees her. I think he's really like the only person that sees her, I guess, apart from Nosferatu for a
Mhm.
while.
Yeah, until Harker gets realizes that she is right and is like, "You were right all along. I'm sorry, I doubted."
Mm-hmm.
Actually, speaking of Harker, something that I wrote down. This is kind of something that I've been like doing ever since I saw Longlegs, but now whenever I watch a movie, I like try to figure out how it slots into the Longlegs universe. Like I make little abstract connections. And this one I found kind of interesting because we have like Jonathan Harker, who has the same last name as the main character of like Lee Harker from Longlegs. And then there's also this little monologue where Ella is like talking about feeling like a doll.
Mm.
Yeah, like when they're on the beach and she's talking to Anna and she's like, "Do you ever feel like you're a doll, like you're someone else is controlling your emotions?" And I was like,
It's an interesting parallel.
I guess Longlegs is a sort of Nosferatu entity, but
Yeah.
a lot goofier.
Very true.
I forgot my long legs. Oh yeah, something else I found really interesting was, I didn't really pick up on it the first couple watches. This one especially is the symbolism of lilac, especially with Ellen. Like, she first shows us that like another connection to nature. She gets really mad at Thomas for picking these lilacs, and then they lay lilacs on her as she lays in her deathbed, essentially, with Nosferatu. She also has lilacs like strewn in her hair when she's being intimate with Orlok. So I kind of looked into the kind of folklorish backstory of lilac, and a lot of magical traditions see the flower as a flower of romance and love, especially of short attractions or a blooming of new love. So it's this kind of
Mm.
interesting parallel in between that. And also, it's not with purple lilacs, but white lilacs in English society were thought to be unlucky if you brought them to the house, that you'd bring misfortune onto anyone who crossed into your domain.
Really, the white lilacs.
Yeah, yeah. But purple ones were also seen as like, especially more like Middle Germanic cultures, they were associated with the banishing of demonic energy. So it's a sort of, you know, overt symbolism that she was a sort of yin to Nosferatu's yang.
Yeah, in the book they talk about her smelling of lilacs, so
Interesting.
that is actually canon.
Huh.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of cool. There's all these little like Easter eggs that are spread across all the different movies and uh, literary literary works inspired by the original work.
I was also curious about Edgar's use of color in the movie. So much of this movie is so blue. And I'm wondering if it's indirect inspiration from the original and how they tinted it.
Yeah, it really comes across like that. Yeah, like you said with the blue, and then with the dawn, it's like a very obvious dawn. And I was
Yeah,
watching,
very orange.
very
Yeah.
very orange, and then yeah, it's almost like reddish when they're doing fire, which is usually pretty orange, but it really comes across as like this stark contrast, especially with all these like really crushed blacks. Can't really like see what's happening in the background, but everything in the foreground is like very enhanced by that.
Add this to the list of isn't there like a whole thing with like movies with like the blue and orange color scheme?
Yeah, yeah, it's like the mid 2000s color contrast because it just works so well.
Yeah, it's a good combo. You can't go wrong with complementary or like complementary colors.
I've also seen a lot of people discussing this comparison of Lily Rose Depp's facial acting to old paintings depicting madness in women.
Oh,
Wide eyes, this certain expression. I've seen a lot of people comparing her to older paintings. It's really interesting.
Ah, that's interesting because on my first watch in the theater, I felt like I think it's just because the theater was so loud and overwhelming, and I'm just a little too autistic for it these days. But um, the I felt when I first saw it, I was like, I feel like she's leaning a little too hard into the like stereotypical hysteria. But now that I've watched it a few times, I actually disagree with that original take.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess with the volume turned down to a normal amount, it seemed a lot more normal.
I think, yeah, I was looking definitely more at her facial expressions and acting during this rewatch, but when I first saw it, I was immediately drawn to the way that Nicholas Hoult portrays Fright, the way that he shows that he's scared.
it is an amazing
I
job
feel
of
like
it.
he's such a meticulous actor.
Mhm.
And it's funny
But
because he has this. Okay.
I really feel like the scene where he first meets Orlok is so tense because of the way that he's acting.
Yeah, because in the previous versions, they just kind of have this weird feeling about Orlok, but you can see that Thomas through Nicholas's acting is like terrified, like crying and almost like blubbering with this sort of intense fear and dread that he's feeling from Orlok's presence. And just that's
Right.
really creepy ethereal nature that they were able to capture with like pretty true time and true and tested cinematography with moving Orlok around like the shadow appearing next to him, pouring his wine and then disappearing into the next scene. It's done really well.
Right. You mentioned that the camera tricks were something that is rooted in film history, right? They're
Yeah.
old techniques.
Yeah, they're old techniques. They actually come from before like German expressionism during the Romance era, from like essentially just after this film takes place in the late 19th century is when they really started those sorts of techniques. So it's kind of interesting to see them harken back to all these really interesting historical moments.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like
very
Eggers does a lot of research.
Mm-hmm. You gonna say that?
definitely very on brand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to this documentary with Javin, the cinematographer, and he was looking back at his old movies, especially The Witch, because he pretty much only used like dolly and crane shots in Nosferatu to give it this more like classic feel. But in The Witch, they used a lot of Steadicam, and he hated it. He's like, I hate this look. I want something more classical and kind of theatric. It's kind of interesting to see their evolution through that.
Really? So there's yeah, now that I think about it, there's really no Steadicam
Yeah.
in Nosferatu.
I don't think there is at all, because they had only they had a few
Yeah.
scenes in the lighthouse because of the remote location. It was also the same with the Northman. It was the one scene where Anlith is attacking the small hamlet essentially, and that was like one of the only non-dollied scenes, just because the location was so remote they couldn't do it. But it seems like they really wanted to kind of push that home, and they're really able to capture this really spooky feeling, especially when Thomas is walking up to the castle and gets taken to the carriage. Like without that, I think in shaky cam had been like, oh, you can really feel his emotion, but here is like a dream, and it's really easy to capture that with the more like dollied effects.
Yeah, it's very dreamlike.
Awesome. Very dreamlike indeed. Actually, speaking of Nicholas Hoult, this watch through kind of brought me to contemplating who my favorite Jonathan Harker is out of all the movies, because they're all so unique and they're all very good, but in such different ways.
Mm-hmm. I would say personally that Nicholas Hoult really captures at least the more like realistic feelings we'd have. But personally, I'd have to go with, at least in the Draculan sense, Keanu Reeves' really amazing British impression.
Oh my god!
Such a good accent.
Good.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Impeccable. Can't even
He
tell that
nailed
he's a
it.
Canadian.
But like also, I think it was the original, the Murnau version. He was just so like theatrical and like slapstick with his body acting that like I can't help but love that one as well.
Yeah, he was like whimsical.
Yeah.
Like, hello, my dear, good eye. Oh, it's really charming.
I guess that is also pretty emblematic of like the silent films in general.
Yeah, because they had to do a lot more body acting because they didn't have dialogue. Well, not spoken dialogue, that is.
Yeah, I think while they don't really do the gestures in this movie, the facial expressions I feel like still feel very silent movie era.
Yeah, like with the extreme close up of Orlok when Thomas cuts his finger, and like you can see the like transfixiation and sort of this intense attraction to the blood. He's like, oh, just really sells it. Every time I see that scene, I'm like, damn, that's just perfect. He's like really holding himself back, unlike the previous versions where they would get all dramatic and suck on the thumb, especially Herzog's version. It's like, oh my god, so great.
Yeah. And this Nosferatu definitely doesn't hold back when he's hungry. It's like big gulps.
Big gulps. Yeah, that's actually, again, Eggers and his love of history, how old Serbian tales of vampires would feed, as they wouldn't, do little puncture marks on the neck. They would draw blood right from the heart area. And yeah, especially with the sound design, you can really hear that he's having a good meal.
It's more monstrous.
Yeah, he really comes off as monstrous. Yeah, and again, to like those older depictions, typically, especially in like Serbian folklore, it seems like they took a lot from that. I guess it makes sense too, because the original Alban Grau said that he took a lot from Serbian accounts of it. But they're these like essentially like undead, ghoulish creatures. They're not, these fanciful sort of alive, suave vampires that we know of today. Just this sort of undead creature. And also something really interesting is that in the Serbian folklore, typically if you staked a vampire with like a hawthorn stake, which is wood, of course, instead of an iron one, you have to watch out for butterflies or moths coming out of the vampire, because that was like their soul leaving their body. But it was kind of hard to depict, so they just went with the iron stake.
Interesting. Thinking about the way they depicted the vampire I guess, drawing blood directly from the heart is interesting because Ellen, when she has that intense scene with Thomas where she kind of goes from telling him about what's going on with her and this evil spirit to kind of being like, why didn't you believe me? And then they, have like a kind of a steamy moment. She says, kiss me on the heart, which is very symbolic.
Yeah, it seems like she's at one point reliving this intimate moment that she had with Orlok, but also kind of commanding the same sort of feeling to almost seem like to make him jealous, and then saying out loud, like, show him our love. Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, speaking of symbolism, I just now had a thought, and it sadly doesn't. Well, not that I'm aware of. I don't think it pertains to this particular edition, but in the book and in other versions, it's specified that the Nosferatu has hairy palms.
What?
And I just now remembered that used to be like a thing that they said that like Christians would say would happen if you masturbated. Like it was one of the like little myths to deter people from doing that you would get hairy palms.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like this connection, like, oh, if you do it, you might be a vampire. I think in Coppola's version they show
are
it.
they insinuating that the vampire's been wanking?
Tricking off. I mean, been alone for a while.
It is this really amazing allegory just for your vampires are often like your shadow self.
Yeah.
The darker impulses that are there, that are a part of being human, but specifically in Ellen's case, she really was not allowed to acknowledge at all.
Yes, to quote the God Warrior, it's not Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I guess that points more towards, Eggers' main direction of the film, making this about essentially a tragic story of womanhood in the 19th century.
Yes. Yeah, definitely very solid. Lots of very good allegories and symbolisms going on.
Yeah, it is interesting how I feel like a lot of people get caught up in, oh, it's just a story about, this young woman being attracted to this monster. And it's so frustrating to hear sometimes.
Yeah, it's very like a very surface interpretation of it, because there's so much more, even just like in the original interpretations of it.
Absolutely.
Well, like, the character of Nosferatu himself is very like very much like a metaphor for like xenophobia, like this fear of like, foreigners, like, oh, these weird Eastern Europeans who talk funny and have strange traditions, to the degree that like we other these people from ourselves in a sense.
Yeah, that's really true.
That it's easier to see this guy as a monster because he talks funny and do strange things and wears funny hats.
Oh, and the hats, that just reminded me of how good the costuming was in this.
Oh, so good. I don't know if you've seen footage of him in regular daylight getting ready, but it is incredible.
I don't think I have, actually.
Oh,
I have to send you a clip because it's fantastic.
Yeah, please
I will do it right now.
And that too, because like, of course, most of the movie Nosferatu isn't in the light. They show a little bit more from like lit up with this torchlight when he's on the ship. And he has this like really like decayed and bloody skin, but especially when the sunlight hits him, like you can see how well the aesthetics were for this movie. Like just it's insane amount of detail they did to capture this ghoulish figure. It was amazing.
I know, and Bill Skarsgård is completely unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He really transformed into, I don't know, and sometimes being that heavily covered in prosthetics, it can be hard to act through that.
Yeah, exactly. But he still really sold it. It was really cool because I was looking at some behind the scenes of how they essentially transformed Skarsgård, and he worked with, well, rather he did a lot of research on old Soviet films as Eggers put it, he wanted him to have this old Balkan chain smoking a pack a day sort of voice. And yeah, they worked with an opera singer to actually lower the tone of his voice an octave. Like all of the scenes where he's speaking are his actual voice. And they actually used, for a lot of his like growls and things, you're just moving a big slab of granite on the floor. You get these like sort of really guttural noises. Really interesting.
Really?
That is wild.
The voice is really incredible.
Yeah, it's
He
iconic.
transformed.
Yeah, it's definitely become very iconic.
And how do you feel about the mustache?
Oh, I personally love it. Because it's like, he's supposed to be, from at least what we can know, this Transylvanian noble from who knows how long ago. I'll go into in a little bit that we might have an idea of how old he is, but yeah, it really sells that he's this ancient person. Like they do sacrifice the more ethereal nature of the previous Nosferatus, but I think it feels more grounded, and it makes him, like Dad said, this more othered creature. Like you can tell that he's from a different world that just either doesn't exist or is far removed from Germanic society.
Yeah, I really liked the mustache. It was jarring when I first saw it. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
the hair that's kind of like on one side of the head, falling down, a little messy, and then this big mustache. But I liked it upon the first watch, I think. But I remember walking out of the movie theater and hearing people talking about the mustache.
Yeah, and reading online, like I was looking at, doing some research, and there's lots of interesting takes on Reddit, and a lot of people are like, I don't get the mustache. It was really distracting. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it was all that.
It's a mustache.
Yeah.
Have these people not seen like old photos and portraits of people back in the day? Like,
Clearly not.
It was all about having like the craziest fucking facial hair you can imagine. Like some of those guys in their mutton chops, that is just completely out of control.
Oh, Thomas's character has like the big sideburns.
Yeah. I think everyone does, and like Friedrich even has a funny little mustache and stuff. Even Robert Eggers said that like you're hard pressed to find a Romanian noble that doesn't have at least a mustache, if not like a giant beard. So, he likes his historical accuracy, so it makes sense that he went in that direction. Especially, with his garb, he has this very elegant but old looking coat that he's always wearing instead of this sort of black gaunt look.
Yeah, it is very elegant. Like it looks like it was once quite splendid to look at, and now it's like dusty and rotting. But there's this like subtle pattern on his jacket that's really interesting, and just the whole silhouette. I feel like they created a new silhouette for Nosferatu, who usually has this very like the tall, skinny, shadow-like silhouette, but his is like a little more dramatic all the time.
And much more theatric.
When he's wearing clothes.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, this skinny little guy.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, like, regarding the mustache again, like, you're looking at a creature whose skin is like half rotting on his body. Do you really think he is like maintaining his mustache and keeping it small? I don't.
That's his only pride and joy now, and that's probably also why he wears, his fantastical clothing, is he wants to hide his sort of tiny ghoulish form from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
His decaying visage.
The first reveal of him, and I mean, I guess he was revealed at the fireplace during that scene when Thomas is signing the contract and all that, or being introduced to him. But I feel like you really like first kind of see him when he's in the grave.
Yeah.
When he's in his tomb.
Yeah, because most of it's like in the shadow, and it's like the sort of implications of what he is. You can see, like his silhouette. You can see his long fingers, but not until I think it's supposed to be kind of like the dusk hits him, you can see what he truly is. They did a really good job of it because in that scene he seems dead. Like he seems like a real
He
corpse.
does seem dead. Yeah, the eyes are kind of rolled back in the head.
He's got maggots all over him.
Taking a little nap.
Yeah, just having a little snooze in the middle of the day.
When
You
he
know?
stands up, the dirt that falls from his body.
Oh yeah,
So cool.
yeah,
I love it.
So
that
many
was a
great
nice
details.
detail.
Yeah,
The Eggers brand is extreme attention to detail.
yeah, it's it's
Mhm.
it's really cool. I was about to say like one of the really cool details is Orlok's sigil that he uses. It's like essentially a combination of a bunch of different occultic symbols. It has old Cyrillic on it. It has 9 letters that spell out Zalmoxis, which is this kind of weird word that is really unknown today, but apparently it was actually a deity of the ancient Dacian people, which is the language that they recreated for Orlok because Dacia back in the Roman times was where now
Mm.
is Transylvania and Romania. So it's kind of seeming like he might be a couple thousand years old. But the also thing with the Zalmoxis is that he was sort of this Christ-like figure and also a chthonic god who's like very heavily connected to wolves and imparting eternal life to the undead. And I think the implication is that Orlok is either one of these chosen undead, but I think he's actually Zalmoxis himself because he has the same sigil on his coffin.
Right. It is on the coffin.
They do say at one point, I think whatchamacallit, Defoe's character says that like he was he was birthed essentially by like he was a dark magus essentially, and he was doing some dark magics and made like a pact with, yeah, I believe he says a pact with a devil for
Yeah, and that would also track with the original tellings of Nosferatu because he was supposed to be essentially a creation of. Anyways, that one.
song, and you'll eventually land on the right demon.
Oh, also something really cool about like old Dacian lore is that Ouroboros we see on the logo is actually called a wolf serpent, and they had called it the Draco, which was this old form of dragon, which is also where the name Dracula comes from. So it's this really sort of interesting, loop back to not only ancient history but to the originalities of Dracula himself.
Really? Tied to the word dragon.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And like super interesting because dragons are one of those like mythical creatures that, as far as we can tell, never existed. But like almost every single society and culture has record of like dragons in their mythology.
Oh, you
Right.
should you
They're
should
like
watch the documentary Reign of Fire because dragons are real.
Oh yeah, that really happened. Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like this ultimate predator, it can fly. It's reminiscent. It's kind of feline. Um,
Yeah,
but it's also
reptilian.
kind of
Yeah.
serpent-like. Sort of everything that we fear in one creature.
And it's not only hungry for, human flesh, but it also wants your gold.
Yeah. It wants everything that you have.
Yeah.
Oh, and to
Yeah.
that, the Dacian interpretation of Draco, it was a depiction of an ancient god they called Balar. It was a malevolent dragon or demon, they're not really sure, but it also was said to prey on young women. So it kind of wraps back around to the sort of possession of Ellen at the beginning.
Yeah, actually, speaking to the possession of Ellen to the beginning, I could not help but like watching that and feeling grateful that while my parents are not people who are either particularly religious or believe in the occult, they've always been like, yeah, you don't mess around with like Ouija boards and stuff like that. Like you don't know what you're talking to. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad as a lovely little kid was never like reaching out to the abyss for company.
I thought her story when she was telling Franz about her childhood, it was so sad because she, you know, had a nice childhood until she started feeling very lonely. Um, she's talked about like her dad seeing her in a certain way. as she got older, and that she craved comfort and didn't have anything. And then because she has this tie to another world, she reached out. And then, of course, a demon is the one that
Yeah.
responds, unfortunately. But I thought that story was incredibly sad.
Yeah, they
Oh,
did a really good job of
definitely.
showing that.
And very emblematic of the times, like, like if a young woman was assaulted, it was of course her fault and she was the sinner and all the guilt rested on her.
Hmm. And
Right.
same
And
with
then
like insanity, right? Like they perceived it as like lunacy was literally a term of like, oh well, women go crazy when the moon is out, and also they saw sleepwalkers as like this sort of like crazy person had insight into a different sort of realm, and so they really feared people like that.
yeah. There's actually a really amazing museum in Los Angeles called the Museum of Jurassic Technology. And they have an
Ooh,
entire section of the museum dedicated to old beliefs like that.
Oh,
And they have little dioramas for a lot of them. Like there's one that's like they believed if you had a cold, if a duck breathed on you, that you would feel better, duck breath.
I think we should bring that back. You know?
yeah, I think I would feel pretty okay if I had a duck breathing on me, to be honest.
It's really fascinating.
That would have to mean that I'd have like, effectively befriended the duck, and like that could only be good news for me.
Yeah, it can't go wrong there. It's really interesting to see all these interesting interpretations and connections through history that we had with old animals. Like, again, harkening back to the movie, the scene when Thomas first arrives in Romania, he's staying with this essentially Romanian hotel that has a bunch of Romani there, and he wakes up at night to this kerfuffle, goes and sees this naked lady on a horse and this entire village essentially following her. And what that is with the white horse especially, they were essentially like vampire hunting, and they'd have a virgin on top of a white steed, and the grave that they stepped on with the horse was the grave of a vampire. So it had this, like interesting connection with purity and in the afterlife. But mostly, a lot of the time, it wasn't like a naked 20-something, and they said like a virgin, but they actually meant like usually like a small child that would find the vampires.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Of course.
So that's interesting. Yeah, they're vampire hunting then. They were looking for the undead.
Yeah, and because I think in the original they like put him in like cloves of garlic. Like it seemed like Orlok knew that his time, at least around here, was coming to an end. And another reason why he was wanting to move into Germany was, they had the modern sensibilities, but they had let go of their ancient superstitions, like getting rid of
Right.
vampires. And then
Right.
in this one, like they really kind of hit that home, especially when Thomas is talking about them vampire hunting, and Orlok gets seemingly really scared to the point where he gets very angry with Thomas. He's just like, stop talking about this. It's like, oh, interesting. Like he's really, it seems like that's something he's actually afraid of.
That's also actually a really interesting parallel, or like, I don't know, yeah, I guess a parallel to like how modern plague has swept through the world, and that like, countries that already deal with a lot of sickness and illness like had no problem with masking up and doing the lockdowns, but over here where we haven't really had a pandemic in a long time aside from HIV, but that's a little different. um, and everyone's kind of gotten used to brunch life. People refused to take those measures.
Yeah, take it seriously. Just like Friedrich didn't take the
It's like Friedrich.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He was like, "What are you talking about? We're fine. What quarantine? We're leaving."
Yeah. And then when
And
it
it
was
was
too
also
late,
sort of
right?
like the good Christian couple, anything that was possibly supernatural or dark that happened around Ellen, Anna and Friedrich were like, "Oh, she's talking about her husband," or "This is just God." And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was kind of like what they would sort of like, I think they seemed doubtful because they were so frightened, but they were like, oh, it's definitely probably this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
It's
Yeah.
like they're doing it like a self-soothing technique for themselves to not have to embrace the realities of this kind of sick old world everyone still lives in.
I was gonna say it's very avoidant of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like
it can't be this thing that I can't deal with. It has to be this thing that I can deal with.
yeah, exactly. It can't be a demon, or like, when uh Defoe's character is talking to Friedrich, he's like,
Demon.
"No, I mean a demon." Yeah. He's like, "No, this really is." And then he also says, "Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen such things in this life that would make Isaac Newton crawl back into his mother's womb." Like, oh, wow.
Fantastic line, by the way.
So good.
Yeah, very good.
You're saying
I definitely chuckled. It makes me think about, I think, one of the most pivotal lines in the movie where Ellen asks, does darkness come from within or beyond?
that? Mm.
So yeah, I think that was in the trailer, and I was so drawn to that, and I was like, oh, I like what they're about to explore.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because in that moment she's trying to figure out if she should feel guilt or not. I think like she's like, is this coming from inside me? Like, am I creating this, or
Mm.
is this just happening and I'm reacting
Yeah.
to it?
Yeah,
Good
and
point.
I've seen some interviews with Eggers talking about, that's what draws him to horror as a genre, and it's kind of why he sees a lot of people fascinated in the genre, because, these horrific things are rooted within ourselves, and we have this morbid fascination and wanting to explore, what does this mean? But there is a lot of like guilt and fear surrounding that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and a lot of people do sort of seem to like everyone at some point in their life has to visit the question of like, am I creating this life that I'm living, or am I merely responding to it?
Yeah.
Also, definitely a very strong, like, you can draw a strong parallel there to just the experience of like domestic violence in general, of questioning like, am I the victim or am I not the victim? Like,
Mm.
and we too must ask ourselves, are we the baddies?
No, it's all the rats and the little rat guys. Oh yeah, speaking of that, I think probably my favorite character. It's so hard to say because everyone was so great. It was probably Knock, because he's kind of comes back to that very like whimsical Murnau version of himself, where he's like, giddily running around the city getting ready for Orlok's return.
With no pants on.
Yeah, no pants on.
Just
And like,
munching pigeons.
yeah, just having a little crunch. And even in the first scene we see him in, as Thomas is late for work, he's like laughing to himself because it seems like he knows what's about to happen to everything. Like all the pieces
Yeah.
are falling into place. And something I didn't notice until we watched this one is when they do a shot of the German contract, he has this occultic letter with Orlok's seal on it that he covers up really quickly so that Thomas can't see it. And I was like, oh, it's a nice little attention to detail there. It's a very quick little scene.
Yeah, I didn't notice the laugh until we rewatched it. And then also looking back, he had, the scabs on his head, almost as if he had the Nosferatu plague already.
Mm-hmm. It was one of the notes I took the last time. I was like, oh, maybe it's nothing, but yeah, especially looking at it again, you can see it on Friedrich as well. After his family dies, like he has these giant scabs, and yeah, Knock has it right away. Like who knows how long he's been under the influence of Nosferatu.
Yeah, Knock is definitely a more playful, whimsical character for sure. Just from the first scene where he's giggling on the floor, you're like, okay. And it's so early on in the movie too, which is really fun.
Yeah, he was really great. And if I don't know if I'm remembering incorrectly, but I feel like his like plague spots got like worse throughout the movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like near the end when they accidentally kill him when he's hanging out in Orlok's casket, he was like very, very poxed. It was like all over his body. It wasn't just sort of this one little start of a legion. It was like all over. I got really sad because he didn't get to become the Prince of Rats. I was like, oh, you
Didn't get
deserve
to be
that.
Prince of the Rats.
And he kind of
Yeah.
came to his senses. It seemed like he was snapped out of his insanity there at the end, and he said, "Please, just kill me." And like he clearly felt shame for all the destruction he'd brought.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to approach his character, kind of giving him this arc, or at least a sense of realization at the end of the movie of what he's done and what he's brought to the town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely the mangiest man I've seen in a while.
He's so fun. Just hanging out with the rats.
Yeah. Very, very good.
Yeah, and seemingly, oh, go ahead.
I too would do all kinds of things to be the Rat Prince.
It seems like a pretty cool title. I'm not gonna lie.
Absolutely.
It was pretty cool too, because in this film, I have to find the right account because I've heard they either used 5,000 or yes, 5,000 rats total, but in the scene in the church, or not the church, in the abandoned house, they used 2,000 live rats just in that scene alone, with Defoe doing his monologue. And it's crazy too, because apparently they used 10,000 rats in Herzog's version, but it definitely came across as there's being more in Eggers. But also, another parallel is Eggers said that he was more happy that he didn't make this movie right after The Witch as he had planned, and made it, almost a decade later, so he had more experience under his belt. He had worked with his intimate crew more.
Yeah. I'm glad that I hope that the rats were a little more pampered than on Herzog's set.
Yeah. Eggers spoke to that and said that they were, and I feel like I have a better time believing Eggers when he says things more than with Herzog, because you never know when he's actually just fibbing.
You never know. He could be fibbing. But that's it. I just love all of the interviews with Willem Dafoe. I feel like the only thing he really spoke about were the rats.
Yeah.
He was just like, yeah, I got to act alongside all these rats, and they all have little personalities, and I was so afraid of stepping on them. And he just, in every single interview, he kind of raves about the rats and how much he had, how much fun he had filming with them.
So cute. He's such a cool guy.
He befriended his co-stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to imagine that each rat had like a tiny rat trailer with like a little rat star on the door.
Yeah. Absolutely. All of them each got their own trailer.
Just like, what did you say, 5,000? 5,000
Yeah.
tiny little trailers?
But they're little, so like that, you can deal with that.
Each one is like the size of a toaster, it's fine.
Yeah. They had the diva rats that didn't want to come out of the trailer.
You could tell those were the ones that were in like the initial shots, the ones that were like standing up and like cocking their heads. I'm like, oh, those are the diva rats.
I mean, rats are so smart. They must be very interesting acting partners.
Yeah.
I hope that they got to eat so much little rat snacks.
A lot of cheese. The rat gets cheese.
I hope so.
I mean, so far as I know, rats will eat pretty much anything, so.
They do like to nibble on a lot of things, yeah.
It was probably more so a matter of making sure they didn't eat the food for everyone else.
I can't imagine having to wrangle that many rats.
Yeah, they must have had like probably incentives of like getting them with foods or pheromones or something to get them to move in directions, or like you said, wrangle them all up. I was gonna say, because they filmed it in Prague, which that gives it its old feeling, but they actually built 60 different sets in Prague, so maybe they just had a good way of like corralling them within all those sets. So hopefully it didn't get released into the city.
I'm assuming they had a rat handler or two.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are you gonna say, mate?
Two.
Oh no, I was really just thinking about rats.
The natural consequence of watching these movies, you will find yourself thinking about rats.
I know. I'm like, Rats are cool. I want to be the Prince of Rats.
Yeah, I think I hope that the next version that someone does of this is just like all rats, like a
Yes.
fantastic Mr. Fox kind of Nosferatu,
Oh
and
my
all the
god,
characters are rats.
a stop motion Nosferatu, but with rats.
That would be incredible. I would send them money to help make that happen.
This would be an incredible movie to animate. Maybe that'll be its next reincarnation is animation.
Yeah, I actually have a couple friends who are like experienced with stop motion. Maybe I should like message them and be like, "Hey, have you ever considered making a rat movie?"
Well, we have the perfect story for you.
Oh, beautiful. I truly hope that this somehow does happen. Just putting it out to the universe.
I think stop motion is such an amazing art form.
It is so fascinating, and like the amount of patience required is just
Yeah.
wild.
It must feel so good to see it completed after all that work.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And there is this like sort of magical feel to it too, because you're making something inanimate come to life, giving it emotion and a
Yeah.
voice.
Did you see Stop Motion, like the movie that came out?
I did.
I really loved that.
Did you like it? I loved it too.
Yeah, the whole like process of her like being like trying different kinds of flesh to make her little
Yeah.
doll was
Yeah.
just incredible.
It's a cool
It's very
parallel.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, very Frankenstein. There's a cool parallel between a lot of horror movies showing this sort of degradation of insanity, which they did really well in stop motion. But
I
and Lily Rose Depp's acting was just so phenomenal. It's insane.
It was incredible. I was shocked to hear that she did all of the contortions and the eye rolls herself.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
did
she
it all
really sold
herself.
it. It was fantastic. No body doubles needed. I'm sure we'll probably see her in more Eggers roles. I think from
I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah, from what I've read, because Anya Taylor-Joy kind of was that obsession of Eggers for a while, but she said she really enjoyed all the work that she'd done with him, but it was just a lot of grueling hard work that she wasn't really up to do anymore. Defoe said something similar,
Yeah.
but the opposite. Like when he was filming The Lighthouse, that end scene when Pattinson's burying him in the ground. Defoe said that he was actually a little afraid for his life because he's like, I was like cold and tired and wet, and I was being covered in dirt and eating dirt, and he's like, I feel like I'm gonna die.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then what you're looking at around you probably doesn't help with that train
Yeah.
of thought.
Yeah, no.
That is interesting because I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy would have been an amazing Ellen, but and also she got married fairly recently and had a whole vampire-themed wedding. You
That's
have
so
to look up
cool. I gotta have to
pictures.
look at that. It's
Her
funny.
wedding cake was a heart.
Wow,
Oh,
so
Got
cool.
married in this like very gothic church. There are only a few photos, but from what I've seen, it's very Nosferatu.
Yeah, she was actually gonna be the first pick for Ellen when it was gonna be made after The Witch, but it just didn't go through.
yeah, there
I
was
mean,
like a scheduling
Yeah,
because she was busy making something else when this was being done, I believe.
I feel like the Furiosa movie probably was exhausting for her
Oh yeah. I
to be
actually
in
haven't
something
seen
that
that.
big and demanding.
I haven't seen that yet. I actually haven't heard much about it, which is interesting because like the Fury Road was so acclaimed and everyone was all about it.
I loved Fury Road so much. I actually was not that into Furiosa,
that's what
which
I've
was
heard.
shocking.
It's
I
like
surprised myself.
I've heard a lot of people say like it was good, but it wasn't like it just doesn't meet up to Fury Road standards too. Because like Fury Road again
No,
is like a perfect movie. Like it's just so bombastic.
it is a perfect movie. It's so rewatchable. The emotion is there. The new one was really it had a lot of that similar tone, and of course the stunts are amazing. But Anya's character like barely speaks, and
Oh,
it felt kind of
boo.
weird.
It kind of sucks.
That is a little weird when it's like focusing on like character, like
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little harder to connect with her.
so I guess I wonder if they're trying to kind of play to like because like Tom Hardy barely speaks in Fury Road.
Right.
Yeah, it
But I
shouldn't be
kinda
so
love that
scary.
'cause it sort of subverted expectations where, it's like Mad Max, like, very masculine, like, you got Tom Hardy in it, and he kind of, like,
He's like a
takes
side character.
he's like a supporting role to these women who are amazing, and it's about them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was such an amazing choice, but it doesn't really work when it's the other way around, because
No,
that's like every action movie, really.
Hmm.
yeah. Like, oh no, you tried to do a thing and you just made an action movie.
Yeah.
Oops.
It's probably still worth I think it's worth watching, but it was a very, I
Disappointing.
just loved Fury Road so much. I was like, it would have to be so good
Yeah.
just
I
to
wouldn't
meet
mind
my
revisiting Fury
expectations.
Road too. Don't
Oh,
mind.
it's
I feel like
great.
I watched it semi recently, but I can't actually remember watching it. So we could definitely do. I'm sure if we did a Fury Road and Discord night, it
Oh
would
yeah,
be.
for sure. So I was thinking.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there.
Wrapping back around to Nosferatu, what were your favorite scenes?
Oh, that's such
Pretty
a
much
hard question.
anything with Willem.
Yeah.
He was just great in every scene.
I do love the Willem scenes. I think I would have to say either the entire sequence of Thomas meeting Orlok for the first time and having dinner with him,
Mm.
or his confrontation with Ellen towards the end of the film,
Yeah.
where she confesses what's happening, but also is just very transparent with him about her feelings of this darkness of not being accepted, of struggling with this. Like, she voices frustration with him, which is really interesting, but at the same time, she's like, she loves him. And so they have this like clashing moment that I think is really powerful. And at the end of it, they're even stronger. I feel like their bond is stronger. And he's like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, I love you.
Hmm.
And so it really like sets the stage for such a tragic ending. I feel like that scene was so pivotal.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's especially that too when like he first encountered Orlok again. It actually made me feel, like a twinge of sadness for Orlok because at least in this version, like he just came across as this sort of, driving demonic
Mhm.
force, but he clearly like had feelings that he can't feel, and he has this connection with this person that doesn't have this with him, but he's also toxic and commanding and just wants to have this, like he has an insane obsession, just wants to control her life in every facet, to the point where he drains her of her life.
Yeah, their confrontation too was really, really powerful. It is tragic. It was something because I saw this movie with my mom on Christmas Day, in theaters, and she, I guess, really felt strongly about that scene. She was like, it was really sad because he basically told her like, no, I can't love. That's not me.
Yeah.
And there was something very tragic and sad about that.
Yeah, because that's kind of what they touched on, especially in Herzog's version. Like Nosferatu is a very tragic character. And you really feel for him in certain aspects, but he's still just a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, he's terrible. I mean, he's an abuser. He's a predator, but also he symbolizes like a lot of darkness that we see within humanity.
Hmm. I gotta say, I think my favorite scene was probably Willem Dafoe's ending monologue when he was, or both monologues, the ending monologue with the sun coming up from the mirrored face, but also him in the abandoned house when he was burning everything down. It's just like, perfect scene. And he has like, this sort of heightened theatrical acting that really sells this sort of eccentric role he has. But again, like there's just so many good moments of the movie that really stand out beyond almost every other sort of tale of Dracula, but it really builds on all of them. It's just a perfect movie, honestly.
It's so good. I think Pokemon, you said something really funny when Willem Dafoe was character was lighting everything on fire.
Oh yeah, I said I too would let Willem Dafoe burn down my entire house if he were to deliver a crazy monologue while doing it.
Yes. Absolutely. It was such an amazing scene.
Yeah,
Probably really crazy to film too.
Yeah, because that was
I
all
mean,
real fire, right?
you're working with fire and rats, and you got to deliver a monologue.
Yeah.
I love that it's kind of becoming a thing with the Eggers movies. He like, I mean, I think we've all known since at least oh my god, what is that? What is the movie called where he's like, there was a firefight?
Boondock Saints.
Right. Oh
We've known
yeah.
since Boondock Saints that Willem Dafoe does a crazy monologue, but I feel like Eggers is like really like zoomed in on that,
Hmm.
and at least this in The Lighthouse for sure, we get like some really amazing monologue moments.
Yeah, just fantastic. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think in the Northman he really had any monologues. He definitely was a driving force of a lot of the sort of story, but I don't know if because he wasn't one of the main characters. He was very side, but still a great role.
Yeah.
I wonder what Skarsgård Eggers is going to use next.
I know, right? He's used two already.
Yeah, he's
I
going to
mean,
use the
there's
old
a
man.
ton of them, right?
There is, yeah, because there's the father who he's been
Right.
in a bunch of Marvel stuff, and then I think there's 3 or 4 brothers that all act. Let me look this up. There's so many. Yeah, there's 3.
There's 3? Wow.
Very proficient acting in that family. Although it is also just like, from what I understand, it's a very common last name in Nordic.
Yeah, but that it's all that family. But that kind of goes with the territory. It seems like Lily Rose Depp comes from He Who Shall Not Be Named. But I think that's the thing because
Right.
there's some like there's like a difference I think between like nepotism, what they call now quote unquote legacy artists. Like there's some people that are brought up in these industries that are clearly just planted in that don't really fit, but some really take to their roles and kind of fill the shoes of these giants that they've walked in before.
Yeah, I was very apprehensive when this was first announced and she was cast as the star. I was like, "Oh, I'd watched a little bit of The Idol, and while she's, I think, probably the best part of that show, her acting, I was still kind of like, I don't know about this, but I think, did such a fantastic job. I would love to see
Yeah,
her in some more weird psychological horror
Yeah.
films.
Oh, I didn't know that she was actually in Tusk.
oh really?
She
Yeah.
was in Tusk. Yeah, she has like a little role. Yeah,
Interesting.
with Kevin Smith's daughter.
Oh,
Oh. Yeah,
wild.
it's
I
been
love
so
Tusk.
long since I've seen it.
I
Tusk is
absolutely
not, I remember really loving the first half until Johnny Depp comes in and starts doing like some weird like Johnny Depp
oh
hour
Yeah.
yeah.
work.
Boo! Start throwing
I
popcorn at the screen.
Well, I feel like the movie like stopped. It just kind of became him wearing like a fake nose and doing
Yeah,
a
it
thing.
really was. It was like, oh, look at Johnny Depp. He's being silly. Haha. It's like I don't
Yeah,
care.
that was probably the era where he was doing that a lot. They're like, and then we let Johnny Depp do something kind of odd
Yeah.
if it has nothing to do with the movie.
From my understanding of like how he conducts himself on sets, there's a good chance that there was just no controlling him.
Probably.
From what I've heard, he's a bit of a dick to work with, but that just fits right in with him being a bit of a dick in general. So,
Yep.
but yeah, there's always that moment with like potential nepotism um, artists where you're like, okay, are they actually good at what they're doing, or did they just get a job because it was easy for them to do? And it
Yeah.
is really nice to see that Lily Rose Depp does indeed have some acting chops.
Yeah, she really put in the work, I think.
Yeah. I kind of feel like she probably like knows and feels like she has to because her father is such a phenomenon.
Hmm.
Yeah. I remember we spoke about this a while back, but she was inspired by Possession, right? The movie Possession for
Yeah.
her role. in
Yeah,
Nosferatu.
because
Yes, I
the
still have to watch it.
I'd be down to watch that soon. Because yeah, the original actress, or the actor, sorry, that played Ellen in, or rather Mina in Herzog's version, was the lead in Possession,
Hmm.
which I was like, that's an interesting parallel to use possession as your sort of driving force for your character, and it does definitely come through. You can see this sort of, like she has this demonic possession about her. Really sells it.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yep, I would definitely. I think I rate it higher every time I see
Yeah.
it. And my first viewing was just so like put off by the loudness of the theater, and then admittedly some like very reactionary knee jerk kind of like just seeing Lily Rose Depp on the screen for the first time and being like, I hate your dad. I don't know if I like you.
Totally.
Which like obviously, no one is their parents. But I always get a little cagey.
Anything else to
Yeah.
add for Nosferatu, guys?
Pardon?
Anything else to add?
No, I think
that's it.
I've covered all of it.
Yeah, I was just looking through my notes, and I think we touched on everything I really got written down. There's just so much to talk about this movie.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of the backstories between the sigil on the ring and
Yeah, did we get through all of your notes?
Yeah, I took 5 pages of notes, and 2 of them are just on like trivia and
amazing.
behind the scenes stuff. Oh, actually, there was one really funny piece of trivia that I was looking through, and in that scene where Skarsgård is drinking the blood of Holt on the floor there the first time, apparently the one and only thing that Nicholas Holt could feel was the prosthetic penis hitting his leg. And so after they were done filming, Skarsgård sent it to him, or I think the prop director rather. Like, here you go.
Oh, I've seen there's a photo.
That's so funny.
Have you seen it? It's Nicholas Holt outside in full costume outside of a trailer holding the prosthetic penis, and it's like framed for him to keep. And he's got this goofy grin on his face and he's showing it.
That's so funny. He's wearing like a little like 19th century like gown smock. It's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh my god. That's beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah, if you could steal any prop from this movie, what would you steal?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Ooh.
I
guess the rats don't count.
No,
right?
the rats don't count. I think I would probably want like either one of the documents with the seals on it, or probably like the signet ring itself.
Oh my god, I just looked
The ring is
up
really
the
cool.
picture of Nicholas
I want her
Holt.
locket. Did you did you see the picture? It's so
That is
goofy.
incredible. Oh, he looks so excited.
I love it.
What a guy.
What a guy.
What would you steal? Oh yeah, you said the locket, right?
Probably the locket. I really loved the locket. Or even just the contract. It was such an interesting object. I wanted to like look at it more every time they showed the contract that he signed. I'm like, wait, go back.
Yeah.
I want to look at it more. Please.
Yeah, I very much agree. I wish that like I don't know, I'm very, very obsessed with like the box where he signs his name at the bottom of the contract. It's so ornate. I'm like, bring that back.
Yeah, it was all just so cool. I think it even had like a little ribbon on it. I was like, that's just perfect. Also, all the crystal like cups and chalices they use are so cool.
If I were to take a prop, I think I would go with Orlok's coffin.
Ooh, good one.
Just like have that. And
you can buy a replica. It's really wild. I think it's $20,000, but you can buy a replica of it on the like official merch site.
That's so
I don't remember. I think it's. Let me see.
You'll know when I win the lottery. I'll just be sleeping in
Orlok's
coffin.
There will be signs.
I'll come on stream in a giant suit of armor.
If I win the lottery, there will be signs.
Yeah, Dad just rolls on.
I got the popcorn bucket, but
that's so cool.
I got the popcorn bucket. That's the tomb.
Oh, cool.
I think it's gonna be the perfect size for Peanut.
I love that.
Peanut house.
Do budgies take
They
like their baths?
also Oh, yeah. Budgies. Oh my god, it could be like a little bird bath
Yeah.
for Pudding.
Put like some like plastic rats in there, you know? Perfect.
Or, oh my god, have you seen videos
There's
of
some
like
really
have you seen videos of like when birds eat like red fruit and they'll like put a plastic dome over them and
Yes.
it looks like a murder scene?
Very dumb.
Yes.
Just feed Pudding some red fruits inside the popcorn bucket.
I want an
Yeah.
Orlock standee. What? Because this merch is
I know
cool.
you can get a standee. I thought
Okay.
they had the replica on here, but it's not here
That would be amazing,
anymore. I'm
actually.
like, did they sell out?
Maybe
Like,
they did.
and now I want to know who owns it. I must know.
Yeah, like is it one of your neighbors? Is it someone?
I did
Okay.
this is kind of just a side note, but when I first moved to my apartment, I found out through the old tenants that our next door neighbors, this like acclaimed romance novelist,
Whoa.
but spicy romance. So they write
Oh,
smut.
Like old lady smut. I love that.
It's amazing, and I've like never cooked up enough courage to ask her about it. I've even like taken care of her cats sometimes when they're out of town, but I'm still like I'm like
An
I need
enigmatic
to know all
neighbor.
about this. Yeah.
So cool.
I want
Okay.
my neighbor to be a romance artist instead of Steve.
All right. I'll start writing smut and move in.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. May, do you have any plugs you'd like to plug?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, there's this really great podcast. Let's Dead.
Please, that.
Well, I heard about a really cool stream on Twitch. There's this streamer called MayDreaming. I don't know. Do you know anything about this person?
Yeah, she's a nerd.
I've heard of her. I heard she's got a really creepy doll named Peanut.
Mm-hmm. Also, merch.
Um,
Go buy merch.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode, which will be, I don't know, something